The shuttle descended through the amber clouds of Vexor Prime, carrying 47 new cadets to the most prestigious military academy in the Galactic Coalition. Among them sat a young woman named Ilara Vance, her dark hair pulled back in a simple braid, her gray eyes watching the landscape below with quiet fascination. She was 22 years old, born on a small farming colony called Meridian 7, a place so peaceful that most maps didn't even bother to mark it.
Ilara had never seen a real weapon until she was 18.
She had grown up tending to injured animals, helping her mother run the colony's only medical clinic, and reading old Earth books about philosophy and poetry. Her hands, which would soon learn to hold pulse rifles and combat blades, had spent years planting seeds and bandaging wounds. When she smiled, which was often, it transformed her entire face into something warm and welcoming. The shuttle touched down with a gentle bump, and immediately the atmosphere inside changed. Cadets began pushing toward the exit, their voices loud with excitement and nervous energy. Ilara waited patiently, letting others go first, picking up a small bag that someone had dropped and handing it to its owner with a soft smile. Outside, the Vexor Military Academy spread before them like a city of steel and glass. Towers rose into the sky, connected by bridges and walkways. Training fields stretched in every direction, and, in the distance, Ilara could see ships of various sizes lined up in perfect rows.
Instructors in crisp black uniforms stood waiting, their faces hard and unwelcoming.
A voice boomed across the landing area. It belonged to a massive karate named Instructor Drell, his blue skin marked with the ceremonial scars of his warrior clan. The karate were known throughout the galaxy as fierce fighters, their culture built entirely around combat and honor. "Welcome to Vexor Academy," Drell announced, his 4 eyes scanning the group with obvious disdain.
"Most of you will fail.
Most of you will go home crying to your families within the first month.
We don't train soldiers here. We create weapons.
If you cannot become a weapon, you have no place among us." Ilara listened quietly, her expression unchanged. Around her, other cadets straightened their backs and tried to look tough. She noticed a young man beside her cracking his knuckles, a girl with purple hair clenching her jaw so hard that muscles stood out on her neck. The cadets were led to their barracks, assigned bunks, and given exactly 30 minutes to settle before their first evaluation. Ilara found her bunk in the corner of the large room, near a window that looked out over a training field. She began unpacking her small bag, placing a worn book on her pillow and a small wooden bird carved by her father on the shelf beside her bed.
"What is that?"
a voice asked from behind her.
Ilara turned to find 3 cadets watching her.
The one who had spoken was tall and muscular, with the distinctive silver hair of someone from the Valdis system. His name, she would learn, was Corin Ash, and his family had produced military officers for 7 generations. Behind him stood 2 others, a pale woman with sharp features and a heavy-set man with arms like tree trunks. "It's a bird," Ilara answered simply, her voice soft and pleasant.
"My father made it for me when I was a child.
On my colony, we have birds with wings that span 2 meters.
They're quite beautiful." Corin laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. "A bird. She brought a bird."
He looked at his companions, who laughed along with him.
"Tell me, farm girl, do you know where you are?"
"This isn't some peaceful backwater where you can plant flowers and play with animals. This is Vexor. The best warriors in the galaxy are made here." "I know where I am," Ilara replied, still smiling gently.
"Thank you for the information though."
Her calm response seemed to irritate Corin more than any argument would have. He stepped closer, towering over her smaller frame.
"Let me give you some advice. Go home. Before you embarrass yourself. Before you get hurt."
Ilara looked up at him, her gray eyes meeting his without fear or anger.
"That's very kind of you to worry about me. But I think I'll stay and see what happens." Corin stared at her for a long moment, clearly confused by her reaction.
He had expected fear, or maybe anger, something he could respond to. Instead, he got nothing but calm politeness. With a disgusted sound, he walked away, his companions following. The pale woman, whose name was Vera, glanced back with a smirk. Soft ones like her never last a week. The first evaluation was a physical assessment, designed to measure strength, speed, and endurance. Cadets were put through a series of tests that left most of them gasping for breath and dripping with sweat. Ilara completed each test quietly, her results placing her firmly in the middle of the group. Not impressive, not terrible, just average.
During the combat portion, cadets were paired up for basic sparring.
Ilara was matched with a nervous young man named Tomas, who seemed almost as out of place as she did. When the instructor told them to begin, Ilara moved slowly, her stance relaxed.
Tomas threw a punch that she easily blocked.
She could have countered, could have swept his legs and put him on the ground, but instead she simply defended, letting him tire himself out.
After 3 minutes, the instructor called time. Cadet Vance, the instructor said, his voice dripping with disappointment. Do you understand the purpose of combat training?
To learn how to fight effectively, sir, Ilara answered.
Then, why did you spend 3 minutes doing nothing but blocking? Cadet Tomas was tired and nervous, sir.
I didn't see the need to hurt him just to prove a point.
The instructor's face turned red. Around the room, other cadets snickered. Corin's laugh was the loudest.
Didn't see the need, the instructor repeated slowly.
Let me explain something to you, cadet.
In real combat, the enemy won't care if you see the need.
The enemy will kill you while you're being gentle and kind.
He turned to the rest of the group.
Let this be a lesson. Mercy is weakness. Compassion will get you killed.
That night, word spread through the barracks about the farm girl who refused to fight. Ilara became the subject of jokes and mockery. Someone had pinned a note to her bunk that read "Flower Child" with a crude drawing of a wilting plant. She removed it without comment and went to sleep.
The next morning, physical training began at dawn.
Cadets ran 10 kilometers through rough terrain, climbed walls, crawled through mud, and completed obstacle courses that seemed designed to break them.
Ilara kept pace, never pushing to the front but never falling behind.
She helped another cadet who had twisted his ankle, supporting him for the last kilometer even though it slowed her down. When they returned, Instructor Drell was waiting with his arms crossed.
Cadet Vance. You finished last.
Yes, sir.
Cadet Reyes needed assistance. Cadet Reyes is not your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to be the best soldier you can be.
With respect, sir, I believe being a good soldier includes taking care of your fellow soldiers.
Drell's 4 eyes narrowed. You believe wrong. 20 extra laps. Now. Ilara nodded and began running again without complaint.
Other cadets watched her go, some with confusion, some with contempt, and a few with something that might have been grudging respect.
In the mess hall that evening, Ilara sat alone at the end of a long table.
Other cadets gave her space, either avoiding her by choice or following the unspoken rule established by Corin and his followers. She didn't seem to mind, eating her meal quietly and reading her worn book.
A tray clattered down across from her.
Ilara looked up to find a young woman with bright orange skin and 3 eyes taking a seat. She was Melian, from a race known for their exceptional pilots and their complete inability to lie.
I'm Zara, the woman said. Everyone says you're weak and stupid. I watched you during the sparring match. You're not weak. Ilara smiled. Thank you, Zara. I'm Ilara. I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are.
You're the girl who brought a wooden bird and refuses to fight.
Zara took a bite of her food and chewed thoughtfully. Why are you here? You don't seem like someone who wants to be a warrior. I have my reasons. That's not an answer. No, it isn't.
Ilara's smile remained, but there was something in her eyes now, a shadow that hadn't been there before.
Maybe someday I'll tell you.
For now, I'm just trying to get through each day.
Zara studied her for a long moment, all 3 eyes focused with unsettling intensity. You're hiding something. I can tell because I can't tell what it is. That's unusual for me. Maybe I'm just boring and there's nothing to hide.
No, Zara said with certainty.
That's not it. But I'll figure it out eventually. For now, I've decided we're going to be friends. Don't you worry about what others will think?
Zara shrugged her orange shoulders.
I never worry about what others think. It's exhausting and pointless. Besides, I think you're interesting, and interesting people are rare. Over the following weeks, Ilara continued to perform at an average level in most areas.
She showed no exceptional skill in weapons training, no particular talent for hand-to-hand combat, and no interest in distinguishing herself. But those who paid attention, and there weren't many, noticed small things. During a tactical simulation, her team won because she noticed details others had missed, enemy positions she shouldn't have been able to identify, patterns in the computer's behavior that gave away its strategy. She never took credit, always praising her teammates for their execution, but Zara saw the truth.
In the medical training module, Ilara demonstrated knowledge that surprised even the instructors.
She could identify wounds, suggest treatments, and handle emergencies with a calm efficiency that seemed almost practiced. When asked about her background, she simply mentioned her mother's clinic and her experience with injured animals. The mockery continued. Corin and his followers made it their mission to torment her at every opportunity. They called her names, sabotaged her equipment, and spread rumors that she had cheated her way into the academy. Through it all, Ilara remained calm and polite, thanking them for their feedback and wishing them well.
Why don't you fight back? Zara asked one night, after someone had filled Ilara's boots with some kind of foul-smelling gel. You could report them. You could challenge Corin to a proper duel. You could at least get angry. Ilara was cleaning her boots with patient strokes. What would that accomplish? It would make them stop.
Or at least make them think twice.
Would it? Or would it just confirm everything they believe about how the galaxy works?
Ilara looked up, and again Zara saw that shadow in her eyes. They think strength means hurting others, that the only way to be powerful is to make others feel small.
If I respond with anger and violence, I'm just speaking their language. So you let them walk all over you instead? I'm not letting them do anything. I'm choosing not to respond in the way they expect. There's a difference. Zara made a frustrated sound. I don't understand you at all. That's okay. You don't have to understand me to be my friend.
The real test came 6 weeks into training, during an exercise called the Crucible. Cadets were dropped into a harsh wilderness environment and expected to survive for 3 days while completing various objectives. They were divided into teams of 5, and, through what Ilara suspected was deliberate cruelty, she was placed on a team with Corin. Their team also included Vera, the pale woman who followed Corin everywhere, a quiet young man named Shin, and Zara, who had somehow convinced the administrators to place her with Ilara. The dropship left them in a frozen mountain range, with temperatures well below freezing and visibility limited by constant snowfall. Their objective was to reach a checkpoint on the other side of a massive glacier, capture a flag, and return to their starting point. Corin immediately took charge. Here's how this is going to work. Vera and I will lead. Shun, you're on navigation. Zara, you're our eyes since you can apparently see through anything. And, Farm Girl, you stay in the back and try not to slow us down.
Ilara nodded agreeably. That sounds like a reasonable plan.
They began their trek across the frozen landscape. The cold was brutal, cutting through their standard-issue thermal gear like it wasn't even there. Within the first hour, Shin's navigation equipment malfunctioned, leaving them to rely on landmarks and instinct.
By the second hour, they were lost. Corin refused to admit it, pushing forward with stubborn determination while the temperature dropped further.
Vera's lips had turned blue, and Shin was shivering so badly he could barely walk.
Even Zara, whose species was adapted to cold environments, was struggling. We need to stop and find shelter, Ilara said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken since they began. Corin spun around. I didn't ask for your opinion, Farm Girl. The temperature is going to drop another 15 degrees in the next 3 hours. If we don't find shelter, at least 2 of us will have severe frostbite. Possibly worse. And how would you know that? Ilara pointed to the sky. The cloud formation. The way the wind is shifting.
On my colony, we had harsh winters. I learned to read the weather or we would lose livestock. Corin stared at her, then, at the sky, then, back at her.
For a moment, she thought he might actually listen. Then, his jaw tightened. We keep moving. We're warriors, not farmers afraid of a little cold. They kept moving. An hour later, Vera collapsed.
Her body temperature had dropped to dangerous levels, and she was barely conscious. Corin carried her, but his own movements were becoming sluggish, his decisions increasingly erratic.
Ilara didn't ask permission. She simply took over.
"There's a rock formation ahead," she said, her voice calm and commanding in a way none of them had heard before. "It will provide shelter from the wind."
"Shin, can you walk?" Shin nodded weakly. "Good. Lean on Zara. Corin, keep carrying Vera. Follow me."
To his credit, Corin followed without argument. Perhaps he was too cold to fight, or perhaps somewhere in his frozen brain he recognized that she was their best chance of survival. The rock formation was exactly where Ilara had said it would be, a natural cave that blocked the wind and retained some measure of warmth. She had them inside within 20 minutes, and then she went to work. From her pack, she produced supplies that she had gathered throughout the training period, things others had overlooked or discarded.
A thermal blanket that could be wrapped around 3 people. Emergency heat packs that she had saved instead of using frivolously. Dried food that would keep their energy up.
She worked on Vera first, rubbing her hands and feet to restore circulation, monitoring her pulse and breathing with practiced ease. Then, she moved to Shin, then, to Corin himself, who sat in stunned silence as the farm girl saved his life.
"How did you know?" Corin asked finally, his voice rough. "About the weather, about this cave, about everything?"
Ilara was boiling snow for drinking water over a small heat source.
"I grew up in a harsh environment."
"Different kind of harsh, but you learn to pay attention.
To notice things others don't. The instructors said you were the weakest in our class. The instructors see what they expect to see."
She handed him a cup of warm water.
"Drink this slowly. It will help." Corin looked at the cup, then, at her. "Why are you helping me? I've been terrible to you." "Yes, you have." Ilara's voice was matter-of-fact, without anger or resentment.
"But we're on the same team right now, and teammates help each other."
"That's what I believe."
"You can decide what you believe when this is over."
They spent the night in the cave.
By morning, the storm had passed, and Ilara led them to the checkpoint through a route she had somehow calculated in her head. They captured the flag, returned to the starting point, and finished the exercise with the second best time of all the teams. Instructor Drell was waiting for them with an expression none of them could read. His 4 eyes fixed on Ilara as they emerged from the transport ship.
"Cadet Vance. Report." Ilara stood at attention.
"We encountered difficulties due to weather conditions, sir. The team worked together to overcome them." Cadet Ash showed exceptional leadership in carrying an injured teammate for several kilometers.
Drell's eyes narrowed. "That's not what the survival monitors showed."
"The monitors can show data, sir, but they can't show intention or heart. Cadet Ash carried Cadet Vera because he cared about her well-being. That's leadership." Corin stared at her. She was giving him credit for something he had done only because he was too stubborn to leave his follower behind. She was turning his action into something noble. Drell studied them both for a long moment, then nodded.
"Dismissed. All of you get warm food and rest.
Physical training resumes tomorrow at dawn." As they walked toward the barracks, Corin fell into step beside Ilara.
"Why did you do that?"
"You could have told him the truth. You could have made yourself look good."
"What truth?" "You did carry Vera." "I just helped with navigation." You're not."
He struggled to find words. "You're making me look good when I was the one who almost got us killed." Ilara stopped and faced him.
"Listen to me carefully, Corin. You made a mistake. A bad one. People almost died because of your pride. Now you have a choice.
You can feel guilty about it and become a better leader, or you can feel resentful and stay exactly who you are.
She started walking again. I'm hoping you'll choose to become better. But that's up to you.
She left him standing there, confusion and something new written across his face.
That night, Zara found Ilara on the roof of the barracks, looking up at the stars.
The temperature was mild, and the sky was clear for the first time since they arrived.
You know he doesn't deserve your kindness, Zara said, sitting beside her. Maybe not. But I didn't do it for him. I did it for the person he could become. You really believe that? That people can change? Ilara was quiet for a moment. I have to believe it.
Because if people can't change, then nothing I do matters.
What does that mean? But Ilara didn't answer.
She just kept looking at the stars, and Zara saw tears streaming silently down her cheeks.
Ilara? What's wrong? Nothing.
Ilara wiped her face and smiled, but it was a sad smile, carrying weight that Zara couldn't understand.
Just memories. They sneak up on you sometimes. What happened to you? Before you came here? A lot of things. Some good. Some terrible. Ilara stood up. We should sleep. Tomorrow will be hard.
She walked away, leaving Zara alone with questions that had no answers. But the Melian made a silent promise to herself.
Whatever Ilara was hiding, whatever pain she carried, Zara would be there for her. Because that's what friends did.
And she had a feeling that before their time at the academy was over, Ilara was going to need all the friends she could get. 3 months had passed since the Crucible, and the academy had changed in subtle ways. Not on the surface, where instructors still shouted and cadets still competed with fierce determination, but in the undercurrents that flowed beneath.
Corin no longer mocked Ilara.
He didn't exactly defend her either, but his silence was noticed. Some of his followers had drifted away, confused by his changed attitude. Others had stayed, adapting to the new reality without understanding it. Ilara continued to perform at her careful average. She passed every test, completed every assignment, and gave the instructors nothing to remember. But Zara watched, and others were beginning to watch too, wondering what exactly the quiet farm girl was hiding.
The advanced combat module began in the 4th month.
Unlike basic training, which focused on general fitness and fundamental skills, advanced combat pushed cadets to specialize.
Some chose weapons mastery, learning to handle everything from ancient blades to plasma rifles.
Others focused on tactical operations, studying strategy and command. A select few were tested for the pilot track, where reflexes and spatial awareness were valued above all else.
Ilara chose medical operations, the support track that most combat-focused cadets considered beneath them.
She would learn battlefield medicine, emergency surgery, and trauma response.
The choice surprised no one. Of course she chose medic, Vera said loudly in the mess hall. Though Corin had stopped targeting Ilara, Vera's resentment had only grown.
She saw Ilara's kindness during the Crucible as a humiliation, a reminder of how weak she had been.
It's the only thing she's qualified for. Can you imagine her in actual combat? Ilara heard the comment but didn't react.
She was studying a medical manual, her food growing cold beside her.
Zara slid into the seat across from her. Why do you let her talk like that? Because it doesn't matter what she says. Ilara turned a page.
Words only have power if you give them power.
That's very philosophical. It's also kind of annoying. Ilara smiled. I know. Sorry. The medical track was more demanding than anyone expected.
Cadets had to learn anatomy for 6 different species, memorize drug interactions and dosages, and practice surgical techniques on realistic simulations. They worked in the Academy's medical wing under the supervision of Dr. Krell, a stern woman with mechanical hands that moved with inhuman precision. In combat, Dr. Krell told them on the first day, "You will see things that break your mind."
You will hold friends as they die. You will make decisions that haunt you forever. If you cannot handle that, leave now. No one laughed.
But several cadets transferred out within the first week, unable to stomach the realistic simulations that sprayed fake blood and screamed in authentic agony.
Ilara excelled.
Not in the showy way of top performers, but in a quiet competence that Dr. Krell began to notice. Her hands never shook during surgery. Her decisions during trauma scenarios were quick and correct. When other cadets froze at the sight of simulated horrors, Ilara moved forward with calm determination.
Where did you learn this? Dr. Krell asked one evening, after Ilara had successfully completed a simulation that most fourth-year cadets failed.
Your file says you worked in a small clinic treating animals. Animals and people aren't that different, ma'am.
The body wants to survive. You just have to help it. That's not an answer. No, ma'am. It isn't.
Dr. Krell studied her for a long moment. There's something in your eyes, Cadet Vance.
Something that doesn't belong in someone your age.
I've seen it before, in veterans who have survived things that should have killed them.
She paused. What happened to you?
Ilara's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Perhaps someday I'll tell you, ma'am.
For now, may I be dismissed?
Dismissed. Ilara left, and Dr. Krell made a note in her file.
One word, watch.
Meanwhile, the combat specialists were preparing for the first intertrack competition. Every 6 months, the Academy held a tournament where cadets from different specializations faced each other in simulated combat. It was partly about training and partly about ranking. Performance in the tournament affected everything from future assignments to career advancement. Medical track cadets weren't usually expected to compete. Their role in the tournament was support, standing by to treat injuries and provide assistance. But this year, the rules had changed. A new general had taken over Academy operations, and he believed that every soldier should be able to fight, regardless of specialization.
All cadets will participate, Instructor Drell announced during assembly. Medical track, engineering track, intelligence track. Everyone fights. The announcement caused a stir. Combat specialists saw it as an opportunity to prove their superiority.
Non-combat specialists saw it as unfair and dangerous.
Ilara saw it as inevitable. You'll have to fight, Zara said that night.
She had chosen the pilot track and had proven to be exceptional, her 3 eyes giving her spatial awareness that other cadets couldn't match.
You can't hide anymore. I wasn't planning to hide. Then, what were you planning?
Ilara looked out the window at the training fields below, where cadets were practicing under floodlights. I was planning to finish what I came here to do.
Which is what? Become a soldier. A real one.
The kind who protects instead of destroys.
That's not really what they teach here, Ilara. I know. But I can learn what I need and use it the way I choose. That's always been the plan.
The tournament was organized as a bracket system. Cadets were matched randomly, fighting in elimination rounds until only one remained.
The top 16 finishers would earn recognition and advancement. The bottom 16 would be placed on probationary status.
Ilara's first match was against a cadet named Voss, a weapons specialist who had finished first in his track. He was tall, heavily muscled, and had been training since childhood in a family tradition of military excellence. The odds were not in her favor.
Try not to hurt her too badly, someone called out as they took their positions in the arena. Laughter rippled through the watching crowd.
Voss smirked.
Don't worry, farm girl. I'll make it quick.
The combat arena was a circular platform surrounded by energy barriers. Matches used training weapons that delivered painful but non-lethal impacts. Victory came from forcing your opponent to surrender, knocking them out of the ring, or incapacitating them through accumulated strikes. The signal sounded, and Voss charged forward with overwhelming aggression. His first strike was meant to end the fight immediately, a sweeping blow that would have knocked Ilara off her feet.
She wasn't there.
The watching crowd fell silent as they tried to understand what had happened. Voss had moved fast, faster than most cadets could react, but Ilara had simply stepped aside at the last possible moment, her movement economical and precise.
Voss recovered and attacked again. And again. And again.
Each time, Ilara avoided him with the same minimal movement, never counterattacking, never striking back. She was reading him, the crowd began to realize. Reading his patterns, his habits, his tells.
3 minutes into the match, Voss was gasping for breath.
His attacks had grown sloppy, his frustration obvious. He had been trained to overwhelm opponents quickly, not to chase someone who refused to engage.
"Stand and fight," he shouted. "Stop running."
Ilara stopped. She stood perfectly still in the center of the arena, her training weapon held loosely at her side. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. Voss bellowed and charged one final time, putting everything he had into a single devastating strike.
What happened next took less than 2 seconds.
Ilara moved forward instead of back, stepping inside his guard where his strength was useless. Her weapon came up in a precise arc, striking 3 points in rapid succession, his wrist, his elbow, his shoulder. Nerve clusters that medical training had taught her to locate with perfect accuracy.
Voss's arm went limp.
His weapon fell from suddenly numb fingers. Before he could react, Ilara was behind him, her weapon pressed against the base of his neck. "Surrender," she said quietly. Voss's face was pale with shock and pain. His arm hung uselessly at his side. He opened his mouth, closed it, then, finally, spoke the word that echoed through the silent arena.
"Surrender." The crowd didn't react.
They simply stared, trying to process what they had witnessed. The weakest cadet in the academy, the farm girl who refused to fight, had just defeated a weapons specialist without receiving a single hit.
Ilara helped Voss to the edge of the arena, where medical staff waited. "The numbness will fade in a few hours," she told him. "There's no permanent damage." "How did you know where to hit me?" "I'm a medic. I know where everything is." She walked away, leaving stunned silence in her wake. Word spread quickly through the academy. By the time Ilara's second match arrived, the arena was packed. Cadets who had never paid attention to her before now watched with intense focus. Instructors had gathered in unusual numbers. Even General Vorn, the new academy commander, had taken a seat in the observation deck. Her second opponent was a tactical specialist named Chen, known for her analytical approach to combat. She had studied Ilara's first match intensively and had developed what she believed was a counter-strategy. It didn't work. Chen lasted 4 minutes. She landed 2 hits on Ilara, minor glancing blows that scored points but caused no real impact. In return, Ilara systematically dismantled her defense, targeting joints and pressure points with surgical precision. By the third match, people had started calling her the Ghost. She moved through opponents like they weren't there, avoiding their attacks with impossible timing, striking with targeting that seemed almost supernatural. "She's reading them," Zara explained to anyone who asked. "She watches how they move, how they breathe, how they shift their weight. By the time they attack, she already knows where they're going." "How is that possible?" "She's had the same training as everyone else." Zara shook her head. "No. She hasn't. Whatever training she's had, it wasn't here." Corin sought her out after her fourth match, finding her in the medical bay where she was treating her own minor injuries. She had taken more hits in this match, facing a cadet who had learned from watching the others. It hadn't mattered. The outcome had been the same. "Who are you?" Corin asked without preamble. "Really?" Ilara applied a healing patch to a bruise on her forearm. "I'm Ilara Vance. From Meridian 7. I grew up on a farm." "That's not what I'm asking." "I know." She looked at him, really looked at him, and Corin felt something cold run down his spine. For a moment, her gray eyes held a depth that seemed ancient, full of knowledge and pain and something else he couldn't name. "But that's all I can tell you. The way you fight, that's not academy training. That's not any training I've ever seen."
My colony was attacked when I was young, Ilara said quietly.
By raiders. Slavers. Whatever you want to call them. They came in the night and took everything. Everyone. Corin's face changed. Your family? Everyone. I was the only survivor. She put away the healing supplies. After that, I spent years doing things I'm not proud of. Learning things I wish I didn't know.
And then, I came here, because I wanted to become something different.
Something better.
But, you hid your skills.
Why? Because skills like mine scare people.
They make them suspicious and fearful. I wanted to be judged on who I am, not what I can do. She smiled sadly.
I suppose that plan is over now. Corin was silent for a long moment. I'm sorry.
For how I treated you. For what I said.
I know. Is there anything I can do to make it right?
Ilara considered. Be better.
That's all anyone can do. Be better than you were yesterday.
The semi-final match drew the largest crowd in Academy history. Ilara faced a cadet named Rax, an engineering specialist who had augmented his body with combat-approved enhancements. He was faster than any unmodified human, stronger, more durable. His reflexes had been improved to the point where most opponents couldn't even see him move. Interesting, Ilara said when she saw him.
Interesting? Rax laughed. That's all you have to say? I've watched your matches. You're good, I'll admit. But, you've never faced someone like me.
No, Ilara agreed.
I haven't.
This should be educational. The match began, and, for the first time, the crowd saw Ilara struggle.
Rax was everything they said he was.
His enhanced speed meant he could attack and retreat before she could respond. His augmented perception let him read her movements just as she read others.
For 3 minutes, they danced around each other, neither landing a significant blow. Rax was faster, but Ilara was more efficient.
Where he wasted movement, she conserved energy. Where he relied on his enhancements, she relied on something deeper.
You're good, Rax admitted during a brief pause. Better than anyone I've faced. But, you can't beat me. Human bodies have limits. I've transcended those limits. Have you?
Ilara's breathing was controlled, her stance relaxed.
Or have you just replaced one set of limits with another? What do you mean? Your enhancements are mechanical. Predictable. They follow patterns programmed into them.
You think faster, but you don't think differently. She shifted her weight slightly.
I've been watching those patterns. Learning them. Rax attacked, a blur of motion that should have been impossible to track. Ilara didn't try to track it.
Instead, she moved to where she knew he would be, based on the patterns she had identified, the limitations of his programming. Her weapon caught him in the exact center of his chest, at the junction point of his enhancement network. It wasn't a hard strike, but it didn't need to be. The impact disrupted the synchronization between his organic and mechanical systems. Rax froze, his body twitching as his enhancements misfired. Before he could recover, Ilara struck again, and, again, each hit targeting another junction point. Within seconds, he was on the ground, his enhanced systems shutting down one by one.
How? He gasped. How did you know? I told you. I'm a medic.
I know how bodies work. She offered him her hand.
All bodies. Even augmented ones. The final match was scheduled for the next day.
Ilara's opponent would be determined by the other semifinal, but no one was talking about that match. They were all talking about her.
That night, General Vorn summoned her to his office.
The general was an older man, his face marked by decades of combat and command. He had served in 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. His office was sparse and functional, decorated only with a single medal on the wall, the highest honor the coalition could bestow.
Sit down, Cadet Vance. Ilara sat. I've been reviewing your file, Vorn said. And I've been making inquiries about your background. Meridian 7.
The colony that was destroyed 17 years ago.
Ilara's expression didn't change.
Yes, sir. The official report says there were no survivors.
A raiding party hit during the night. They killed everyone who resisted and took everyone who didn't.
Slavers, most likely, selling to the outer rim markets.
He leaned forward.
But there was one survivor. A girl, about 5 years old. She was found 3 days later, hiding in a grain silo. I was almost 6, sir. I hid in the silo because my mother told me to.
Your mother?
She was the last adult alive. She kept them busy while I hid. They found her eventually. Ilara's voice was steady, but her hands had tightened in her lap. She screamed for a long time. Vorn was quiet for a moment. The girl was taken to a refugee center. Then, she disappeared.
For almost 15 years, there's no record of her anywhere.
No school, no employment, no medical records.
Nothing.
I learned to be invisible, sir.
It was safer that way. Safer from what? From everything. Ilara met his eyes.
When you grow up the way I did, you learn that being noticed is dangerous. So I learned to not be noticed.
And yet you came here.
To the most visible military academy in the coalition.
Because I'm tired of being invisible, sir. I'm tired of running and hiding. I came here to become something real. Something that matters. Vorn studied her for a long moment. The way you fight. Where did you learn that? Everywhere. The streets, the fighting pits, the mercenary camps.
You'd be surprised what people will teach you if you're young and quiet and good at watching.
You were a mercenary? I was many things, sir. None of them by choice. And now? Ilara took a deep breath. Now I want to be a soldier. A real one.
Not a weapon, not a tool, not something to be pointed at enemies and forgotten.
I want to protect people.
I want to make sure that what happened to my colony never happens to anyone else. Vorn was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was softer than before. You know that tomorrow you'll face Cadet Prime in the finals.
He's the best fighter in the academy.
He's also the son of Admiral Prime, one of the most powerful people in the coalition.
I know, sir.
If you beat him, it will cause political problems.
If you lose deliberately, you'll be compromising your integrity.
Either way, tomorrow will change your life.
Ilara smiled, and it was a real smile, warm and genuine.
With respect, sir, my life has been changing since the day my colony burned.
Tomorrow is just one more change.
Vorn stared at her, then slowly nodded.
Dismissed, Cadet. Get some rest. Ilara stood and walked to the door.
Before she left, she turned back.
Sir? Thank you. For what? For asking about my past instead of just reading my file.
For treating me like a person instead of a puzzle.
She paused. It matters more than you know.
She left, and General Vorn sat alone in his office for a long time, thinking about damaged children and the soldiers they became.
In her bunk, Ilara lay awake, staring at the ceiling.
Tomorrow she would fight Cadet Prime.
Tomorrow everyone would see what she could really do. Tomorrow would change everything.
Zara appeared at the foot of her bed, her 3 eyes gleaming in the darkness.
Can't sleep? Ilara asked. No. Can you? Not really. Zara climbed onto the bed and sat cross-legged facing her. Are you scared? No. I'd been scared before. Real scared. This isn't that. What is it then? Ilara considered. Anticipation, I think. I'd been hiding for so long. Pretending to be less than I am. Tomorrow, I stop pretending. And then, what?
And then, we find out who Ilara Vance really is. she smiled in the darkness.
I'm kind of curious myself.
Outside, the wind blew across the academy grounds, carrying whispers of what was to come. Somewhere in the night, a small bird began to sing, its voice bright and clear against the darkness. Ilara listened to it until she finally fell asleep, dreaming of fields of grain and a mother's voice telling her to hide, to survive, to live.
Tomorrow would bring the final match. Tomorrow would bring the truth.
But, for now, there was only the darkness and the song of a bird and the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who had nothing left to fear. The morning of the final match dawned cold and clear. Frost covered the training fields, glittering in the early light like scattered diamonds. Cadets began gathering at the arena hours before the scheduled start time, claiming seats and arguing about the outcome. The entire academy had divided into two camps, those who believed Cadet Prime would crush the upstart farm girl, and those who had seen something in Ilara's eyes that made them wonder. Ilara spent the morning in the medical bay, helping Dr. Krell prepare for potential injuries. She had insisted on completing her regular duties despite the upcoming match, saying that routine helped her focus. Dr. Krell had not argued. "You know you don't have to do this," the doctor said as Ilara organized supplies.
"No one would blame you if you withdrew." "Why would I withdraw?" "Because Cadet Prime is dangerous. Not just skilled, dangerous. He's injured 3 opponents seriously in the last year. The academy covered it up because of his father." Ilara finished arranging the surgical tools, her movements precise and economical. "I know about the injuries. I treated the last one. Cadet Morris.
He's still doing physical therapy for his shoulder." "Then, you understand the risk." "I understand that there's a person in this academy who hurts people because no one stops him."
"I understand that his family's power protects him from consequences."
Ilara turned to face the doctor. "I also understand that if I back down now, I'm telling everyone that power matters more than principle." Dr. Krell was quiet for a moment.
"You've thought about this." "I've thought about everything. It's what I do." The arena was packed beyond capacity by the time Ilara arrived. Cadets stood in the aisles, sat on each other's shoulders, hung from observation platforms that hadn't been designed for spectators.
The energy in the air was electric, charged with anticipation and barely contained excitement.
Cadet Prime was already there, warming up in the center of the ring.
His name was Valder Prime, and he looked exactly like what he was, the privileged son of a powerful family, raised from birth to dominate and destroy. He was tall and perfectly proportioned, his body sculpted by the finest trainers money could buy. His weapons were custom-made, his training gear the most advanced available. He looked at Ilara as she entered the arena and smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "The farm girl," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd.
"I've been looking forward to this." Ilara walked to her starting position without responding.
She was wearing standard issue gear, carrying standard issue weapons. Compared to Valder's gleaming equipment, she looked almost shabby.
"No clever response?"
Valder continued.
"No wise words about inner strength versus outer appearance?"
"I was hoping for something I could quote when I talk about this match later." "I don't have anything clever to say," Ilara replied simply.
"Shall we begin?"
General Vorn stood in the observation deck, flanked by senior instructors and visiting dignitaries. Among them was Admiral Prime himself, Valder's father, a severe man with cold eyes and an expression of absolute certainty. "Your son will win," one of the dignitaries said.
It wasn't a question.
"Of course," the Admiral replied.
"The girl is talented, I'll admit.
But talent without backing is nothing. My son has been trained by the best instructors in the coalition since he was 4 years old. This match is a formality." General Vorn said nothing, but his eyes were fixed on Ilara, watching the way she breathed, the way she held herself. He had seen a lot of soldiers in his time. He knew what readiness looked like.
The signal sounded. Valder attacked immediately, holding nothing back.
His first strike was meant to end the fight before it truly began, a combination of speed and power that had overwhelmed every opponent he had ever faced. His custom weapons hummed with enhanced kinetic energy, capable of delivering impacts far beyond what standard equipment could produce.
Ilara was not there when the strike landed.
She had moved at the last possible moment, slipping to the side with an economy of motion that made Velder's assault look clumsy by comparison. He recovered quickly, spinning into a follow-up attack, but she was already gone, circling to his blind side.
Fast, Velder admitted.
But speed alone won't save you. He attacked again, and again, each assault more aggressive than the last. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Ilara avoided everything he threw at her.
She wasn't blocking, wasn't parrying, wasn't engaging at all.
She was simply not there whenever his weapons passed through the space she had occupied.
3 minutes into the match, Velder had not landed a single hit.
"Fight me," he screamed, frustration cracking his composed exterior.
"Stop running and fight me." Ilara stopped moving.
She stood in the center of the arena, her weapons held loosely at her sides, her breathing perfectly controlled. "Are you sure?" she asked, and her voice carried a weight that made some in the audience shiver. Velder charged, putting everything into one devastating attack. His enhanced weapons blazed with accumulated energy, capable of shattering bones even through protective gear.
What happened next would be discussed and debated for years to come.
Ilara moved forward instead of back, stepping inside Velder's guard in the heartbeat between his attack beginning and ending. Her first strike was so precise that observers would later swear they hadn't seen it happen, they had only seen its aftermath.
Velder's right arm went limp.
His custom weapon fell from suddenly nerveless fingers. Before he could process what had happened, she struck again.
His left arm. His right knee.
Points along his body that only someone with extensive medical training would know to target. Each hit was delivered with exactly enough force to incapacitate, no more and no less. In 5 seconds, Velder Prime was on his knees, unable to move, unable to even understand how thoroughly he had been defeated. Ilara stood over him, her gray eyes meeting his with an expression that was somehow both compassionate and terrifying. "Surrender," she said. Velder's voice shook.
This was not supposed to happen. He was the best. He had always been the best. "I don't." "Surrender," Ilara repeated. "There's no shame in it. You fought well. I never touched you." "No. You didn't."
She knelt down so they were at eye level.
"But that doesn't mean you're not a good fighter. It just means I'm better. And maybe that's okay. Maybe being beaten by someone better is how we learn to become better ourselves."
Velder stared at her, and something shifted in his face. The arrogance crumbled, the certainty dissolved, and what was left was something younger and more vulnerable than anyone had seen before. "I surrender," he whispered.
The arena erupted into chaos.
Cadets were screaming, cheering, arguing. Instructors were shouting for order. Admiral Prime had gone pale, his face a mask of barely contained rage. General Vorn simply smiled. Ilara helped Velder to his feet, supporting him as feeling slowly returned to his limbs. Medical staff rushed forward, but she waved them off.
"He's fine. Just nerve disruption. It will pass in a few minutes."
She walked with him to the edge of the arena, her arm around his shoulders, and the image of her gentleness toward her defeated opponent was captured and distributed across the Academy network. Here was the farm girl who refused to fight, standing victorious over the most dangerous cadet in the Academy, and all she wanted was to make sure he was okay.
The aftermath was complicated.
Admiral Prime demanded that the match be invalidated, claiming that Ilara had used illegal techniques. An investigation was launched, medical experts were consulted, and every moment of the fight was analyzed frame by frame. The conclusion was unanimous: Ilara had done nothing illegal. Her strikes had been precise and controlled, targeting nerve clusters and pressure points with surgical accuracy. The techniques she used were advanced but not prohibited.
She had simply outclassed her opponent in every possible way. The Admiral's protests were quietly dismissed.
General Vorn made sure of that.
3 days after the match, Ilara was summoned to the General's office again.
This time, she found him waiting with a small group of serious-looking men and women in unmarked uniforms.
Sit down, Cadet Vance. Ilara sat.
These are representatives from Special Operations Command, Vorn explained.
They've been watching your progress since the tournament began. They have an offer for you.
One of the representatives, a woman with gray hair and calculating eyes, leaned forward.
Cadet Vance, we'd like to offer you a place in the Phantom program.
It's a specialized training track for individuals with exceptional abilities. You would be fast-tracked through your remaining academy training and placed in active operations within 6 months.
Ilara considered this. What kind of operations? Sensitive ones.
The kind that require people who can think on their feet, adapt to any situation, and end conflicts without excessive casualties.
The woman paused. We've seen what you can do. We've also seen how you choose to do it. That combination is rare. You want me to become an assassin? We want you to become whatever the situation requires. Sometimes that means eliminating a threat. Sometimes it means extracting a prisoner.
Sometimes it means walking into a room full of enemies and walking out with everyone still alive. The woman smiled slightly.
We've reviewed your background. You've been doing versions of this for years. We're just offering you resources and legitimacy. Ilara was quiet for a long moment. Can I think about it?
Of course.
But don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't wait. They left, and Ilara sat alone with General Vorn in the gathering evening light.
What do you think? The general asked. I think they're offering me a chance to become something important. And I think that importance comes with a price I'm not sure I want to pay.
What price is that? The price of becoming a weapon again. Ilara looked out the window at the training fields below. I came here to stop being a weapon.
To become something that protects instead of destroys.
If I join their program, I'm not sure I can hold on to that. Then, don't join. Is it that simple? Vorn laughed, a rare and genuine sound. Nothing is ever that simple. But sometimes we have to make complicated decisions based on simple principles.
What's yours? Ilara thought about her mother, screaming in the darkness. She thought about the years that followed, the blood on her hands, the lives she had taken and saved. She thought about Zara and Corin and even Velder, people who had changed because someone believed they could.
My principle is that people matter more than missions. That kindness is stronger than cruelty.
That the measure of a soldier isn't how many enemies they destroy, but how many people they protect.
Vorn nodded slowly. Then, I think you already know your answer. I think I do too.
A week later, Ilara officially declined the Phantom program's offer. She chose instead to complete her regular academy training, specializing in combat medicine with a secondary focus in tactical operations. It was an unusual combination, but the academy had learned not to underestimate unusual when it came to Ilara Vance. The tournament victory had changed her status at the academy forever. Cadets who had mocked her now sought her advice. Instructors who had dismissed her now watched her with careful attention. The story of the farm girl who had defeated Velder Prime spread beyond the academy walls, becoming something like a legend.
But Ilara didn't let it change her. She still helped cadets who struggled with their training. She still spent extra time in the medical bay, learning everything she could about saving lives.
She still smiled at people who had once treated her with contempt, offering kindness without expectation of return.
Zara found her one evening on their usual spot on the barracks roof, looking up at the stars.
You know, Zara said, settling beside her, most people would have changed after what you did. Becoming famous, being offered special programs, defeating the undefeatable.
Most people would have at least gotten a slightly bigger ego. Ilara laughed softly. Maybe. But I think ego is just a way of protecting ourselves from uncertainty.
If we're certain we're special, we don't have to worry about whether we matter.
And you don't worry about that?
I worry about it all the time.
But I've decided that mattering isn't about being special. It's about being present. being there for the people who need you. That's very philosophical. I've been reading a lot of philosophy lately. Turns out there are some very interesting ideas out there.
They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching ships move across the night sky. Then, Zara spoke again, her voice quiet and serious.
Are you going to tell me someday? About what happened after your colony? About where you really learned to fight? Ilara was quiet for a long moment.
When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful rather than defensive.
Maybe. When I'm ready.
There are parts of my past that I'm still trying to understand myself.
But, I promise you this, Zara, I won't lie to you. Whatever I tell you will be the truth. That's good enough for me. Graduation came 6 months later.
Ilara finished in the top 10% of her class, her academic scores balanced by combat ratings that made the record books. She was assigned to the medical corps of a rapid response unit, exactly what she had requested. At the graduation ceremony, General Vorn called her up to the stage to present her with a special commendation, the Vexor Shield, awarded to cadets who demonstrated exceptional commitment to protecting their fellow soldiers.
It was the first time in Academy history that a medical track cadet had received the honor.
Cadet Vance, Vorn said, addressing the assembled graduates and families, came to this academy with skills that could have made her a legend. She chose instead to hide those skills, to be judged on her character rather than her capabilities. And, in doing so, she taught all of us something important about what it means to be a soldier. He turned to face her directly. A true soldier protects. A true soldier heals. A true soldier chooses kindness even when strength would be easier. He handed her the medal. You have embodied those principles every day of your time here. The coalition is lucky to have you. The applause was thunderous.
In the crowd, Zara was crying openly.
Corin stood at attention, his expression full of pride for someone he had once tormented. Even Valder Prime was there, watching with an expression that might have been respect.
After the ceremony, Ilara found a quiet corner of the reception hall.
She was looking at the medal in her hands when a familiar voice spoke beside her.
You deserve it, you know.
She looked up to find Dr. Krell standing there, a rare smile on the stern woman's face.
Thank you, ma'am. I've seen a lot of cadets come through this academy. Most of them are trying to prove something, to themselves, to their families, to the galaxy.
You're the first one I've met who is trying to become something.
Is there a difference? A profound one.
Dr. Krell sat down beside her.
Proving yourself is about the past, about making up for something you think is lacking. Becoming something is about the future, about growing into the person you want to be. She paused.
Whatever you were before you came here, whoever you had to be to survive, that person brought you to this moment.
But, the person you're becoming, that person will change the galaxy.
Ilara felt tears prick at her eyes, something that hadn't happened in years.
How can you be so sure?
Because I've watched you for 2 years. I've seen you face cruelty with kindness, meet violence with healing, answer hatred with hope.
If that's who you are when no one is watching, then, that's who you'll be when everything is on the line. The doctor stood up and adjusted her uniform.
Your shuttle leaves in 2 hours.
Your unit is stationed on the border of the Rim territories.
It's dangerous work.
I know. But, you're going anyway. I am. Dr. Krell nodded once, sharply.
Good luck, Cadet. Or should I say, Lieutenant Vance. She walked away, leaving Ilara alone with the medal and the weight of everything it represented. 3 months later, Lieutenant Ilara Vance stood in the medical tent of Forward Operating Base Delta, treating wounded soldiers from both sides of a conflict that had been raging for decades. Coalition forces and separatist fighters lay side by side, their differences irrelevant in the face of pain and injury. You shouldn't be treating them, one of her squad mates had said earlier, nodding toward the separatist prisoners. They'd kill us without hesitation.
Maybe, Ilara had replied. But, I'm not them. I don't have to become the thing I fight.
Now, as she finished bandaging a young separatist soldier who couldn't have been more than 17, she thought about how far she had come. From a grain silo on a burning colony. Through years of violence and survival. To this moment, this choice, this simple act of healing. The young soldier looked up at her with confusion in his eyes.
Why are you helping me? I'm your enemy.
Ilara smiled, the same warm smile she had carried with her through everything.
Because you're hurt. And because kindness doesn't check your uniform before it decides to show up. She moved on to the next patient, and the next, and the next. There was always more work to do, more people to help, more chances to be the person she had chosen to become. Outside the medical tent, the sounds of distant fighting continued. The war would go on, as wars always did. People would suffer, as people always had. But, in this small corner of the galaxy, in this moment, Lieutenant Ilara Vance was doing exactly what she had always meant to do. She was protecting. She was healing. She was being gentle in a universe that had given her every reason to be cruel. And that, in the end, was her greatest victory. In the years that followed, the story of the gentle cadet who silenced the academy became something more than a legend. Ilara's approach to military service, combining fierce capability with unwavering compassion, inspired a new generation of soldiers. Medical units across the coalition began adopting her methods. Training programs were revised to include her philosophy of protection over destruction. Zara became the most decorated pilot in coalition history, always crediting her success to the friend who had taught her that courage wasn't about being fearless, but about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. Corin rose to command his own unit, known throughout the service for treating prisoners humanely and minimizing civilian casualties. When asked about his leadership style, he always told the same story, about a farm girl who gave him credit he didn't deserve and trusted him to become better. Even Valder Prime, remarkably, became something unexpected. After his defeat, he had requested transfer to a peacekeeping unit, where his combat skills could be used to protect rather than dominate. He was never quite able to explain why, but those who had seen his match with Ilara understood. As for Ilara herself, she continued her work on the front lines for 15 years. She saved thousands of lives, both coalition and enemy. She earned medals she never wore and recognition she never sought. When people asked her about her past, about the farm girl legend, about the tournament victory that had changed everything, she always gave the same answer. I just did what anyone would do. I tried to be gentle in a hard universe. I tried to help where I could. And I tried to remember that every person I met, friend or enemy, was someone's child once, someone's hope, someone's reason to keep going. It was a simple answer. But, then, the greatest truths usually were. On the day she finally retired from active service, Ilara returned to Meridian 7. The colony had been rebuilt by then, a thriving community of farmers and families living on the same land where everything had been taken from her so many years before. She walked to the spot where the grain silo had once stood, now a small memorial garden. Someone had placed a bench there, facing the fields where crops grew in endless green rows. Ilara sat down and watched the sun set over the land of her childhood, casting long shadows across the grain. A bird sang somewhere in the gathering dusk, its voice bright and clear. Ilara smiled, pulled the worn book from her pocket, and began to read as the stars came out one by one. She was home. She was at peace. And she had proven, once and for all, that gentleness was not weakness. It was the strongest thing in the universe.